Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is episode number 79, and we are doing our first episode postseason that includes some off-season talk. We've spent most of the last two episodes reminiscing on that final game, the final playoff series, what went wrong, and I think we've come to the decision that it is time for Inter Miami to look forward. It's time for us to look forward a little bit. There are some key decision dates coming up in the near future, so we're going to talk about those, and then we'll play some off-season bingo to give us sort of a fun way to talk about a lot of the different issues that are upcoming for this team and some of the decisions they have to make, and so on and so forth. But before we do, as always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good, man. Finally, good to be back home and stateside, and I'm looking forward to whatever fun you've cooked up for us today. I know it's an interesting concept, at least for me, and I'm sure the viewers are going to enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And you know what? Postseason is a different vibe in itself. No pressure about games, no pressure about talking about opponents and whether we're going to win or lose. So it's kind of a nice space to be in, although it means the Inter Miami season ended earlier. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the future. So get us started.
Yeah, Inter Miami does not go as far as they wanted to, but it certainly changes our schedule, and it certainly changes the type of things we're going to talk about. And now it's all about gearing towards next season. And listen, we'll spend some of the next couple of weeks talking about, looking back on this season and what went right and what went wrong, et cetera. But tonight, it's all about getting ready for next season, and that is the plan. So before I do any of that, we'll go through sort of the schedule for Inter Miami this offseason, talk about some of the key dates. We'll talk about some of the key roster decisions coming up in a few minutes. And then after that, we'll play offseason bingo. But let's start with the key dates. And the first one is just under 2 weeks from now, November 27th, is the roster decision date. For those that don't know, this is the day where Inter Miami has to make all of their option decisions, all of their contract decisions, whether they're going to opt into contracts, whether they're going to release players. This is the date last year we found out they weren't going to keep Joseph Martinez. They weren't going to keep Dixon Arroyo. They weren't going to keep everyone that was a free agent at that point. Victor Ulloa, for example. Jake LaCava, another guy that didn't get that option last year. So this will be the first date, November 27th, that we will find out about a lot of these option year contracts that Inter Miami has, and we will we'll go over those in a minute. But there's a big number of those. December 5th, that's the Club World Cup draw, which is fun and exciting, and it's this interesting thing that Inter Miami has going on, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when we get there. But that's just something to put on the radar. December 11th is the MLS expansion draft. That's the expansion draft for San Diego FC. They will get to be able to take 5 players from other teams across the league. I don't know if Inter Miami is actually eligible. I think they are, but I haven't heard confirmation on that. So Inter Miami might be worried about losing a player or two there. December 20th, the MLS Super Draft. That is the draft for college players. This is where Inter Miami got Leo Alfonso and Yannick Bright last year. And they haven't traditionally been great at picking out Super Draft picks. But they had success last year, and they'll get a late first-round pick, and maybe that player will be a part of the roster next season. But it is going to be a little more difficult to predict than this past year when they had a really high draft pick. And then in mid-January, they're gonna start preseason, maybe even a little bit before that, because their first official game of the season is February 4th to the 6th. Is going to be that first window for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Last season, Inter Miami got a bye out of the first round because they won the Leagues Cup, and the Leagues Cup winner gets a bye. But just finishing as the Supporters Shield winner, which is how they qualified this year, that doesn't get you a bye into the second round. So they're going to start their season officially on February, that first midweek of February, the 4th through the 6th, depending on their draw. In all likelihood, Inter Miami is going to get a team from Jamaica or the Dominican Republic or somewhere in the Caribbean or Central America, potentially the Canadian Premier League. And it should be a relatively easy test. But I will say last year, 2 MLS teams got matched up with each other in St. Louis City and Houston. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Inter Miami has a real challenger in that first round, and it's a 2-leg home and away. February 14th, they play that preseason game against Orlando City. That's actually going to be during the season, but it's an exhibition. And then the following midweek, they'll play that second leg of the CONCACAF Champions Cup first round. And then in late February, the season will begin. So the schedule's packed, man. There's not a lot of off time between now and the end of the season. I know we would love to continue being in the playoffs, and that would push a lot of these things back because the dates go farther back if you advance to the conference finals. But that's the schedule for Inter Miami this offseason. We'll find out about preseason games.
Yeah, that is an absolutely wild schedule. Now that you've run us through it, that took us a while. And honestly, February is going to come thick and fast. And we're thinking there's going to be a long off season. But before we know it, preseason is going to be upon us. And we're going to be talking about acquisitions, signings, trades, departures. And I'm excited for that. I've always liked this time of the year for football fans. And I know it doesn't fall in the general football calendar when it comes to the rest of the world and Europe, but MLS likes to do things its own way. And I'm just glad that in the middle of the European season, at least the MLS has some off-season activity that's going to keep us excited. And we're going to keep tracking that. We're going to keep talking about it and let it come thick and fast, man. Let it come thick and fast.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot to talk about, of course, and there'll be new kits and there'll be new games added to the preseason schedule. We'll talk about all of that, but that's sort of the outline for this team, and they're going to have to do a lot of business in the meantime, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about in this episode. But before we get there, let's move to this November 27th roster decision date, because this is the next big day for Inter Miami. And by the way, it doesn't have to come on the 27th. It could come any day now, but the 27th is the deadline. So it will come by the 27th. Inter Miami has 8 senior team players that are out of contract right now that they have some options on and some that they don't. But that's a lot of players to potentially lose this offseason. Some of them key players that you'd expect them to bring back. Others potentially not, but here's the list. 2 players that do not have an option for next year, they're just true free agents, is Luis Suarez and Oscar Ustadi. Suarez, there's been some rumblings that he's working on a new contract, but obviously that hasn't happened yet. And then Ustari, a backup goalkeeper that joined in the summer. Who knows about what's going to happen there. A couple players that have 2025 options. So Inter Miami has an option for 1 more year. And that's Jordi Alba, Sergei Christoph, Franco Negri. And then I guess there's some work around in the loan deal with Cello Wiegand. So we'll have to find out about that. But and then lastly, Matias Rojas and Cesar Santos also not under contract. And Matias Rojas being the big one. Dos Santos feels like an easy player to hit the option on. But Matias Rojas, 2 options for 2025 and 2026. But is he a player that Inter Miami wants to keep long term? So those are the options. Those are the players. Anyone there that really stands out to you?
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Matias Rojas, what happens with Cello Wiegand. I know there are a couple of easy ones that we can look at. Franco Negri, Sergei Christoph, I think, are potentially going to get released. But you know what's going to happen? It's going to be the first couple of re-signings or trades that we're going to see, and that's going to give us an idea of what the construction of the roster is going to look like. So, for instance, if we keep Luis Suarez, that might give an insight into what our striker situation looks like, whether we want to sign a backup striker, whether we want to keep Leo Campana. So I feel like as soon as we start getting hints into whether we're keeping Cello Wiegand, we'll have an understanding of what the general makeup of the roster is. And I say that because if we decide to keep Cello Wiegand, for instance, that sort of gives me an indication that the team and Tata Martino, let's assume he's going to be in charge, want to keep the players that we played this season with, wants to keep some of the players that we relied on this season. And that potentially would mean that we're not going to change things around too much. If Cello Wiegand walks, that kind of gives me an insight. Okay, it's everybody could be on the chopping block when it comes to certain contract situations, and we're not going to be nostalgic about it, and we're going to be quite ruthless about keeping certain players and letting certain players go. So I think the first few signs are going to be there at the start in the next couple of weeks, and that's how we're going to start finding out what the roster is going to look like over the next few months.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We talked about it on Monday, but you weren't there, but I talked about it with Mike. It is a moment for Inter Miami to either show huge ambition or to say, this is as good as we can do. And I think that Cello Weekend decision is along those lines. Do we feel like this is good enough, or do we have the highest level of ambitions? And that's going to be sort of an ownership and messy decision. And Tata, will be a part of that conversation. But ambition and how high that ambition is, I think, is going to be something we first get an indication on with these roster releases. And like you said, Cello is a good example of that. You ready to get into it?
I don't know, man. I'm a little concerned you're going to throw me in the deep end with this, but you know what? I love to be challenged in certain situations, and we're going to be playing a bit of a game, a bit of a fun exercise. So why not? Bring it on.
Okay, guys. So we decided that the most fun and entertaining way to do this is to make it a little bit of a competition. And so we decided we're going to play off-season bingo. For those that don't know, bingo is a game where you want to get 5 in a row, whether it's up and down, sideways, or diagonal. The goal is to get 5 in a row. And we are going to take things, maybe predictions that we believe are going to come true this offseason, place them on our own individual boards, and then we're going to publish those, and we're going to track throughout the offseason to see who gets bingo first. So it will be, over the course of the offseason, a little bit of a competition. And I think that's a fun way to look at it. As you guys may know, in bingo, the middle tile is often a freebie. And so we decided to make, for both of us, that Diego Gomez departs the club. Do you have any problem with that? You think that's a guarantee? You think that's 100%?
I wouldn't say that's 100%. I know there's been murmurings around it. We've never got a confirmation, but I think it's like 99.9%. And honestly, it's the closest that we're going to get in terms of surety of anything that we have on the list. So that should be the free tile, and I'm happy to go with that.
Yes. So let me go first, because I think maybe I can illustrate how to do this. The way we're going to converse this with each other is that each column is A, B, C, D, E, and each row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so as I'm keeping track of your spots and my spots, it's A1, B2, C4, whatever. Okay. So my first pick, beyond Diego Gomez departing the club, is that Inter Miami will release Sergei Kristoff. And I'm going to put this one real close to the top. I'm pretty confident about this. Inter Miami clearly is going to want to upgrade at center back. They're clearly going to want to make a statement. And Sergei Kristoff's contract is too big for Inter Miami to keep that around. So even though they have an option for him for next year, I see no way that gets activated. And so that's my first one. And I'm putting it in B3 right next to Diego Gomez.
That's an interesting one. A very similar strategy to what I would have gone with. But I'm not going to copy you, and I'm going to go with something slightly different, although similar. I'm going to go with Inter Miami releases Ryan Saylor, because I completely agree with you. I think center back
position. Hold on, let me stop you. I apologize. Maybe I didn't explain the rules to you well enough. We both put on the same things.
Okay, there you go.
So you got to tell me where you want this pick.
So I'm going to pick Inter Miami releases Ryan Saylor. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to pick that tile that you just chose, Hey Kristoff, and I'm going to go with C2, because I also agree with you that it's going to be a very, very high likelihood of having that option. And thank you for explaining that. I tend to take my own time in figuring out what game rules are. It's never my biggest strength.
Okay, so do you agree, Kristoff? You feel confident about this one?
Yeah, I do feel confident about this one. I think this is going to be very, very locked in. Let's just say that.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you hinted at what your first option is going to be, but go ahead and tell me what your first option is going to be.
No, I you know what? Now that I know that we're going to be picking the same one and building out that tile, I'm going to go with a slightly different option this time around. And I'm actually going to throw a curveball to you here. I want to pick Tata Martino as retained for the next season. And I think that is a little bit up in the air, but I'm leaning towards 60-40. And again, this is not my point of view. I I can talk about what my ideas and thoughts are about Tata Martino, but I have a feeling that the club's going to actually trust him and back him again and give him this other season, not just because he can call this season a semblance of success by winning that one trophy, but I think he has the trust of a lot of the players and largely Leo Messi. So for me, I think it's going to be a close score. And for that reason, I think I'm going to put it in A3.
Okay. You feel good about this one.
I do feel good about this one, even though I don't think it reflects my own choice in this.
I am with you. I don't think they're going to move him. I'm going a little bit less confidence with you. I'm going in E1, make it a little farther away. But I agree. I think the club is going to stick with him. I think he's a guy that they're comfortable with. I also agree that I don't know if I love that decision. This also feels like an ambition choice, right? Show us how much ambition you have. Is winning the Supporter Shield but crashing out early in all the other competitions good enough for you, or do you have higher ambitions than that? And if you do, has he learned something from this year? Has he grown in some way to make you feel like he's going to be that choice moving forward? I have questions about that. And so I don't know if I agree with this decision, but I do think this is what Tata Martino is going to do. Though I'm keeping it out of the path of most importance with by putting him sort of up in that top corner.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. But I feel like I'm leaning slightly towards likelihood more so than you. But anyways, your turn.
I am going in A3 to sort of get me a little closer to completing this first line, that Inter Miami re-signs Luis Suarez. I think that is virtually locked in. I think that as long as Luis Suarez wants to be back, he will be back. Will it come on a TAM deal, or will Inter Miami have to sort of give him a DP contract? If that's the case, I don't know how great I feel about the decision, because I think he's been very good as a TAM. He's been a great TAM signing, but as a DP player, it really forces you to do a lot with him. But that's where I'm going with Luis Suarez.
Yeah, that makes sense. And before I tell you about my positioning for this particular decision, I want to say that now that we've picked Tata Martino to actually potentially stay, or somewhere around that realm of possibility, that might inform some of the decisions. And as I was mentioning, when I talk about players being retained and being let go, I think that's going to influence at least my decisions of what I'm going to pick in terms of possibilities. With regards to Luis Suarez, I completely agree with you. I think this is very likely. It's already been hinted at, and I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I think Luis Suarez has been brilliant this entire regular season, scoring goals left, right, and center, in the conversation for the Golden Boot for the longest time, and could have actually broken it. But the only issue was, I think, in the playoffs, where when we needed him to show up the most, he was potentially the most disappointing player in the playoffs. And that was a little bit of a worry. I think he's going to be fine. We may look to, if I was the coach and if I was the management, I would contemplate and figure out what Luis Suarez's role looks like next season, and where we want to actually utilize him best, whether it's going to be as a bench option, whether it's going to be as a rotational option, because I do feel like sometimes he tends to drift away in games, and that could just mean simply taking him off at the 60th minute mark when you want to bring on fresher legs because you need more defensive solidity. Regardless, I'm going to go with B3 and try to close out my line as well. And yeah, I think this is a very high possibility, and I think this is going to come true.
Yeah, he wants to be here, and I think as long as Messi and friends are here, they're going to make it work. Does it give you any hesitancy if he's a DP? Because it basically is saying you can't have a good player because of Suarez, even though you already had that extra player this past year.
Yeah, I don't see why he would want to switch. I mean, I can see why he would want to switch to a DP contract, but I don't know why the club should give him a DP contract. I would hesitate a little bit for sure, but you know what? I don't want to be Taylor Twellman, and I don't want to throw up my toys before the decision is made. And I'll wait to see what happens. It will definitely shape the postseason very differently if Luis Suarez has to be upgraded to a DP contract, because I think we can do a little bit better on that, and I don't want to say it out too loud because I might get some backlash on that.
Okay, your turn. Tell me who's coming up next for you.
Oof, I haven't thought about this one, but I'm gonna go with Inter Miami signs Paul Pogba. I don't think that's gonna happen, and I'm gonna keep it slightly further away from, again, my likely boxes. But you never know, man. You never know. I think his likeliest destination, if it's the MLS, would potentially be LAFC because they seem to be making that France call. But Inter Miami is definitely going to be in for a central midfielder. And if it makes sense, you know what? It might actually happen. Having said that, I'm going to go with E1 as Paul Pogba being signed to Inter Miami. I think there's definitely a conversation to be had. There's definitely noise and a rhetoric around signing Paul Pogba. I think he might be a really good signing if he can stay fit, but I don't know if it's 100% there yet. I'm leaning towards more 40-60, so we'll see.
I'm so out on them signing Paul Pogba. He hasn't played really in like 3 years. His last year at Manchester United, he spent the whole year injured. He got hurt like 8 games into his Juventus return, and then he got suspended for a year and a half. So I really surprised you put this one so early, but it makes me really nervous. I'm putting him in D5, which is, in my opinion, the least reasonable spot, or the most reasonable spot to put him. This is the least likely that I think is of anything that's going to happen. We kind of talked about some of the things we could go over so we could get the graphics ready. And I have this second to last on my list of possible things to happen. But yeah, I think this is unrealistic.
You know what Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, right? Winning the war is as much as distracting your enemy as winning your own battle. So I'm trying to mess up your board as much as I'm trying to set up my own. So apologies if it's a little bit of a curveball your way, but expect more of those to come.
Yeah, that makes, I guess, sense, except yeah. I can still put him in the worst spot. You'd think you'd want to wait until I have very limited options on where to put him before I go there. To get us back on track, Inter Miami signs a new center back. To me, that's the next most likely thing to happen. And I'm going D3 to sort of complete this. Inter Miami has to get a center back. There's just no doubt about that. I think Kristoff's going to leave, which gives you the cap space to do it. I don't think that Inter Miami is happy with Kristoff. I don't think they're even happy with Aviles and Martinez as their only set. I think they know they want another player for depth. And so even though Martinez and Aviles, well, we'll see how this game goes, but even though those two will likely be back next year, I still think Inter Miami is going to want to go out and get another player. So give me Inter Miami signing a new center back as a high likelihood signing, and I'm going with D3.
Yeah, I think you chose the cop-out option. That's very much a likelihood, and I think that's the likeliest one on the list, perhaps.
I'm trying to win here, man.
I'm also going to go with this very close to my heart. I'm going to go with the C4. So I'm going to go for the vertical line in the C column. Again, I completely agree with you. If we let Serhii Kristoff depart, which I think is going to be the likeliest possibility, we need to sign another center back. I do think there's going to be a couple other center back outgoings, at least in terms of depth. So it may not be a first choice center back. You never know what level they go for, whether it's going to be a youngster, whether it's going to be a veteran. But there's definitely going to be a center back signing, and I can 100% see that happening. So good on you for taking that one.
By the way, just going back to Paul Pogba, I remember a week ago you complaining about us signing Neymar because he's so injured, and the fact that you're bringing up Paul Pogba now is absurd.
I've gone completely left field with this. I'm keeping Tata Martino, signing Paul Pogba, and you've already made my pick for the next one, Inter Miami to sign Neymar. That's going to be my next choice, and I think it is very close to actually becoming reality. And I want to say that if Inter Miami can make this happen logistically, they will move heaven and earth to make it happen. for me, this is a very, very close possibility. I think I'm going to put him in D4.
D4 for you. I'm thinking, I agree with you. I think there's a good chance that we get Neymar. I think that this is about bringing Messi's friends together as long as they have the talent to impact this team. And I think that he does. So I agree with you. I think this is reasonable. I think this is likely, if not probable. And so I'm putting this in a sort of reasonable spot to expect this to happen. I'm going C5, filling out that C column a little bit. What does he do for this team if they go out and sign him?
He brings a bit of dynamism as long as he can prove that he's fit. He's going to bring a little bit of flair, some excitement. And honestly, I think Neymar, Suarez, and Messi is going to be that combination that everyone's looking forward to seeing. We've already seen how well Jordi Alba connects with Lionel Messi, how well Luis Suarez connects with Jordi Alba and Messi. And there's just a level of chemistry that we don't see anywhere else in the MLS. He's going to completely augment that, add a completely new dimension to our attack when it comes to that. And I feel like he brings more eyeballs to Inter Miami. A lot of people are looking forward to watching the reunification of MSN. And if Neymar comes, that's it, man. The trifecta is complete, and people are going to be really excited with that. So a lot of eyeballs and a good dynamic attack as long as he can stay fit.
Yeah, I will say Inter Miami, not likely to do this until January, but I feel like you might hear some rumors popping up in the next month. So this feels like it's real. I know he's got a little bit of an injury. I know Al Hilal is considering breaking ties with him. So those two things have to happen first. But if they happen, I feel like Inter Miami is the obvious next choice, next destination for him. So good pick there. Again, a little higher than I would have picked him, but you're not going to like my next one, though. And that's that Inter Miami trades Robert Taylor. Just the way that he was treated over the last month of the season, maybe 6 weeks of the season, is just going to stick with me, man. He was just a ghost. And it was Robert Taylor. I'm sorry, it was Tata Martino's decision. Clearly, they wanted to prioritize Jordi Alba being the most effective on the ball. And I think it come back to bite them in the end, but I still think this means they're going to move him on.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say this, one of my favorite players for Inter Miami, and this is it, man. As Ash in the comment section has very eloquently put it, Taylor is Finnish. ED in the brackets, for instance. So, yeah, I think his Inter Miami career is coming to an end, which is, again, continuing the curse of the new contracts. He got his contract extension and then completely became a ghost. I don't know what the reasoning for that was. I have no idea what the coaching staff was thinking in terms of using Robert Taylor. I think his downfall or lack of visibility in this Miami team started after he got an injury. And since then, he's just been not utilized at all, not off the bench, not for starts. I think he had one start since, and it's just been not a great season for Robert Taylor. That being said, he still had about 8 goal contributions in the MLS alone. He has managed to get goals and assists regardless of how many minutes he gets on the pitch. So I was very confused with his treatment. I don't know if I liked how they treated him, but I think it's time for him to go. And if we're saying that Neymar is going to be signing on, I expect Robert Taylor to definitely be moved on to make space for Neymar.
Well, it's not just that. I'll remind you guys that there's going to be a mad scramble over the first month of the offseason to acquire more allocation money and to acquire more international roster slots. Inter Miami only has so much allocation money to start with. They have to go out and acquire more. They only have so many international roster slots. They have to go out and acquire more in order to fit everyone they want to fit in this roster. So if you're Inter Miami, you're thinking, what pieces can I move in order to acquire those things that I need to fill out the rest of my roster? It feels like Robert Taylor is the exact type of player that's now under contract because he had the extension, that has proven himself in this league, that you can sell on and bring in a healthy amount of GAM, healthy amount of, or maybe like an international roster slot or two. So those two both feel like they are happening.
Yeah, and I think they're interlinked in some ways. again, I'm going to do my own Robert Taylor episode, and you're going to let me rant on it when that happens, because it's going to be a sad day. We're going to have to do a farewell and a swan song for Robert Taylor's Inter Miami career.
Where are you putting them? Where are you putting this one?
I'm going to put this in E3. I want to complete my line. I think this is a high possibility, and I want to complete my center line. I do think it hits. And it hits not early, but it's going to hit somewhere in January. So I want to make sure this one's locked in.
You had Neymar in D3? Just curious.
I did have Neymar in D3, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote that down wrong. My apologies. Okay, what's your next one?
Okay, I'm going to go with Inter Miami re-signs Cello Wigan long-term.
Okay. Talk to me.
I think Tata Martino is in love with this player. I think Tata Martino rates Cello Wigan really highly. I think Tata Martino relies on Cello Wigan heavily. And because of that, I think this is a close possibility that Inter Miami, if Tata Martino stays on, retains Cello Wigan. This could potentially be one of those cases where Inter Miami management thinks that we don't have the ability to upgrade the right back position. We want to strengthen some of the other positions in the field. And Cello Wigan does a job that is good enough for this team. He does a solid, stable job. And a known devil is better than an unknown devil, and we should go with him. And if Tata Martino stays, I think he's going to convince the management to re-sign Cello Wigan. I'm going to go with B4 for Cello Wigan re-signs.
B4 for Cello Wigan re-signs. I don't love this. I'm putting this in a line where it goes with Inter Miami keeps Tata Martino, so that those two sort of flux together. And if one's wrong, it doesn't ruin any other set for me. And that's sort of my strategy there. I'm going for D2.
Can I change mine?
Sure,
that's actually really smart. I'm going to go with A3. Actually, that's a very smart strategy, Scotty.
You already have one in A3.
Oh, do I? Oh, sorry, A4.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Dude, I don't know if this is the right decision. We talked about we talked about the ambition to show that, to show everyone that you think quality is not good enough. You have to be great. And if you're talking about moving on from Robert Taylor, if you're talking about moving on from some of these other players, sorry, Kristoff doesn't really fit our scheme, but he's not without talent. If you're moving on from Robert Taylor because you don't think he's good enough, it's hard for me to say keep Cello Wigan. He made, just for the record, he made $384,000 this year. I was looking at some of the numbers earlier. And if you buy him, you would have to pay $1 million fee on top of that. That would be amortized. So now you're talking about Cello Wigan costing as much as Kristoff did last year, or close to what DeAndre Yedlin was costing you. And are you really getting a player, at least on this roster, with how talented everyone is and how easy it is to recruit players to this roster, that are you getting a player that's worth that? And I still question it, but you get to pick it. So I'm putting Cello Wigan D2.
No, I completely agree with you. I don't like this at all. I think Inter Miami can definitely do better. We've constantly talked about it, and I don't want to keep harping on, but when Ian Frey played for Inter Miami in that right back spot, the gulf in quality was very much visible. We could immediately see that there's room for improvement. And I'm not saying you need to play Ian Frey. I'm just saying that when someone of the quality of Ian Frey plays in that position, there's definitely improvement in our offensive output. And we just do better as a team. It just seems to flow a lot better. And that means that you can do better for Cello Wigan's position. And if it means that you're going to potentially end up paying as much as you would for DeAndre Yedlin, and the overall economics of it just comes down to be not that economical, let's be honest, I think we can definitely replace him with a better quality right back. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but I do think if Tata Martino stays, there's a case to be made that he's going to stick on with Cello Wigan because I think he likes him.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he's Argentinian helps the most, right? Like the fact that he culturally fits in with the squad probably is the biggest factor here. I think we're going to find out about this soon. This is going to be one of the earliest ones we know about. It's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing their answer because I think it does explain their ambition. Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Out of the best 11 that Inter Miami put out there in terms of what Tata thought was his best 11. So Federico Redondo, Diego Gomez at left wing, Yannick Bright, Busquets in the midfield with David Martinez, Toto Avilas, center back, Calendar and goal. It felt like 9 or 10 of those players could win you a game. 9 or 10 of those players could be the impact player for your team on any given day. And then Cello's the exception. And I don't know, maybe Redondo's not that either, but obviously Redondo's very young and is that sort of high potential player. But Yannick Bright could do that. Sergio Busquets and Messi and Suarez can obviously do that, Jordi Alba. But even Toto Avilas can help you save goals with his one-on-one defense. David Martinez can spray it everywhere. Like, they have a special trait. And it felt like the most sort of just solid across the board is Cello. But is that what this team really wants? Or do they think they can get a higher upside player?
Yeah, to borrow a quote from Graham Souness, who I absolutely despise, Cello Wiegand is a bit of a steady Nancy, man. He doesn't do anything brilliantly, yet he does some things quite steady and stable. You get exactly what you pay for. You know exactly what you're going to get from him when he steps on that pitch. It's not going to be amazing. It's not going to be earth-shattering. It's not going to be game-changing. But he's not going to put too much of a foot wrong. I think in certain positions, you can get away with having that sort of a player. You can have a defensive midfielder who doesn't necessarily rely on being prolific in having really good passes. As long as he does everything well and average, above average, you can get away with relying on some of your other central midfielders to create those offensive chances. But I don't think with the way Tata Martino has started playing, especially towards the latter end of the season, and the way he's relying on his fullbacks to push forward, I don't think you can get away with having someone who's just stable and steady in the right back position. And I think we need to upgrade. You need to have a little bit of that X factor in your right back, especially when you're asking them to get involved both defensively and offensively. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a case to be made that we need to improve Cello Wiegand, because stable is not good enough in that position.
I also think that if you're Messi, you want a player that can get to that right side and be a playmaker. And that's not Cello. So I think if you can get a better right back, you would feel really, really good about that. And so, yeah. Okay, next I'm going with Inter Miami signs a left winger, and I'm putting that to complete my first line across. I think this is going to happen no matter what. I feel very confident that these 5 across in row 3 are all going to happen. I'm just not convinced they're going to be the fastest way to get to bingo, but I do think they all occur. This team is going to sign a left winger. They clearly moved on from Robert Taylor. Diego Gomez is not going to be here for much longer, and so they need a player that can play that spot. They're going to try and get someone that's going to work with Messi, I believe. So whether that's Neymar or not, that would be cool, but I still think they're going to get a left winger no matter what, and so that's where I'm going next.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. If Inter Miami signs Neymar, you complete 2 boxes.
Yes.
Well, that's not very nice of you. Well, now that I don't have anywhere to put in my across, I'm going to actually go for D2. Again, we've given the explanation. Robert Taylor goes. Neymar's potentially going to be signed. And yeah, I do think left wing is a position that they're going to be looking at. Are we considering Matas Rojas a left wing? If he resigns, are we going to say he's a left winger that we signed on? I don't think so. I think that's a little bit of a cop-out. But yeah, Robert Taylor leaving will definitely warrant a case for a new left winger. And again, I think we're going to sign Neymar. So, and Facundo Farias is going to come back, which is basically a new signing, right?
Yeah, but if Gomez leaves and Robert Taylor leaves, I don't think you can trust Facundo Farias coming off an ACL to play every single game. So I think he's going to start games there, just like Robert Taylor did this year. But I think they're going to want to get a guy who's that guy, that number 1 guy as a left winger. I think this is going to be the place where they're going to make a splash. I know you mentioned Paul Pogba, but he would be sort of a midfielder. I know that would be splashy, but I think this is where they make their splash. I have another one that I'm interested in your opinion on a little bit later, but Inter Miami signing Neymar would be a splash. Even if they don't get Neymar, I think they're going to get a big name, whether it's whether it's a name we haven't heard of, but it's a big money signing out of, the Netherlands or whatever. I think this is where they make their big splash on the field this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is potentially going to be one of our marquee signings, whether it's a big name or whether it's someone that we bring in who's promising. Regardless, I think they're going to be looking at this position as an impact position. So definitely one to look out for. Quick question before I pick my next choice. Nico Freire, how long is his contract for?
He's on loan until now, and Inter Miami has an option to buy him. So they can buy him for, I believe, $1.5 million, something like that.
I'm going to go with Inter Miami do not sign Nico Freire long-term. And my justification for that is Inter Miami needs a centre-back. Inter Miami are going to look for a new centre-back, but it's not going to be Nico Freire. He was good, but I do think in that department, we are looking for a bit of an upgrade. And he was never Inter Miami's first choice. In fact, I believe he was Inter Miami's third choice on the list of centre-backs that we wanted. So he was a bit of a stopgap option. And after his injury, it just so happened that we were able to go out and get David Martinez, who is going to be on loan until, I believe, the summer. So with him already on the roster, I think we're going to potentially go for a different sort of centre-back. And I don't think Inter Miami keeps Nico Freire on their roster.
Where are you putting that one?
I think I'm going to go B4.
B4. Yeah, I agree with this one. Nico Freire doesn't get bought. I'm going A2 here, even though I have the wrong thing there, and I'll fix that real quick. This is, like you said, their third choice option, and they ended up going back and getting the second choice option, which was David Martinez. They have the guy they want. They have Aviles. They're going to spend the money that they're saving from Frede and the money they're saving from Christoph to get a really high quality center back and to get a second center back, I believe. And so in order to get that center back, which I have them predicted to do, I think it requires them to make this move. And I think we're going to find out about it soon. So give me B2 for this one. My turn. Let's go with.
We're going into the not so possible territory now.
No, I have another one that I think is absolutely going to happen. I'm going Chris Henderson to Barts with B2.
Ooh. Wait, you already put someone in B2, right? Or was that A2?
I have Nico Freire in B1. Apologies.
Oh. Chris Henderson departs. I don't know. I don't know if that's a sure shot, but I haven't seen the rumor mill recently. And given that Inter Miami didn't do particularly well this season in terms of meeting most of the expectations, maybe they want to keep Chris Henderson on just to make sure that we can construct our roster again in the manner that we want to. I'm a bit on the fence on this one. Hey, it's your tile, so you need to first put him in. Okay, you're going for B2.
I'm going B2.
Yeah. What's your justification for that? Based on that, with mine.
No, but see, this is where the strategy comes in, and I'm trying to keep you
stay silent.
I think this is going to happen. We've heard that Atlanta United is a team looking out to get this coach or this sporting director, and it just so happens that even though Inter Miami's out of the playoffs, Atlanta's not. So I think as soon as Atlanta gets eliminated, this could happen, in a couple days after that.
You reckon Inter Miami, after losing to Atlanta, allows him to leave for Atlanta? That's a bit of a...
I also think there's a world where Inter Miami uses him as the scapegoat. Even though I don't think he's responsible for the losses, they can say, we're keeping Tata, but we moved on from Chris Henderson. And by the way, I would say I think this would be a terrible loss for Inter Miami. But I think the messification of this club, the sort of change in culture, bringing in Raul Sanyehi to be the overseer of what's happening, I think just the role of Chris Henderson has been diminished beyond what he's worth. And so I think another club is going to go out and decide or say, listen, you're worth, and we want to give you more responsibility than what Inter Miami is doing right now. So we're going to give you this big paycheck, and we're going to bring you here, and you're going to help us turn around our franchise.
Well, you make a very compelling argument, and for that reason, I'm going to go for Chris Henderson leaves Inter Miami in C5. I'll be honest, guys. I will be very surprised if I win this bingo because I genuinely don't know what I'm doing in terms of building my tiles. So if you guys have any suggestions, put them in the chat, please. Thank you.
All right, what you got next?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Inter Miami signs a new defensive midfielder.
Okay. Talk to me.
And I'm gonna go for D4 on that.
D4. Why do they need a new defensive midfielder? Why do you feel so confident?
I just think they're gonna sign a backup to Yannick Bright. They've realized that they've absolutely run him into the ground. They saw the results against Atlanta when we didn't win. And there's sort of a progression that you can trace across the season where Tata Martino has come to the realization that this team needs a defensive midfielder. It started with the first few games at the start when we weren't able to sign Yannick Bright on, whatever that reason was, whether that was logistics, administration, or we were just giving it a little bit of time. We didn't sign him on. And then when he was signed on, he didn't play as much. Then he got one game where he really outshone some of our midfielders. And everyone was like, wow, this is a player and a half. And he sort of changed the result for that team. Next, you could see him actually getting a lot more minutes. And by the end of it, he was a guaranteed starter in this team. But the fact that he got injured against Atlanta in that second game and was not able to play the third game, I think when you ask Inter Miami fans what is going to happen, or how valuable Yannick Bright has been, or why did we lose Atlanta? They're going to, against Atlanta, their first answer is going to be, we didn't have a defensive midfielder, and Sergio Busquets and Yannick Bright were a key linchpin for that. So to mitigate against losing Yannick Bright to injury potentially during the course of the season, I think they're going to go for another defensive midfielder. Long story short, we sign another defensive midfielder.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen too. I think I'm going to go D4 also. This is where I'm putting things that are either less likely or going to happen later on in the window. And I think this is going to happen late, like right before the season starts, kind of late. They need another defensive midfielder, but they don't need a star or a starter. They just need someone that can compete with Yannick Bright or can be his, replacement if he gets injured or needs a rest or whatever. And if you're playing as many games as they're likely to play next year. So they need a defensive midfielder. It can be Dixon Arroyo. In fact, they can just go get Dixon Arroyo back. But and by that, I mean, it can be a very cheap player that can just do a job. That's a veteran that has experience that you just feel comfortable is going to come in and have that sort of impact and be stable in the midfield. But they need to do it because they didn't have anyone on this roster that could do that this year for a long period of time. And then they finally had one emerge in Yannick Bright, and you could see night and day the difference when he was on the field and when he wasn't. And as great of a player as I think Yannick Bright is and how amazing his rise has been from draft pick to where he is now, he's not the guy that you wanted to build your team around. And so he's a great piece, but you have to have someone that can sort of accompany him.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's see, my turn. So we're running out of the calls, and then we're going to get into some of the fun ones. I'm going with Inter Miami release Franco Nigpi.
Oh, come on, man. That was literally my next one.
I'm going to go with A5 on that one.
Okay, fair. I'm going to go with C1 on that one.
Talk to me about Franco Nigri.
He's gone, man. Noah Allen's emergence this season has definitely guaranteed that we're not going to be signing Franco Negri anymore. He barely played any minutes in the second half of the season, did not come on. I think he played one game over the last few games, which is fair. I think understandable. We do need to clear up space and build out a little bit more of a roster. And honestly, Noah Allen has emerged as a fantastic player for this team. Someone that you can really trust to that center-back role, which is something I did not expect myself to say at the end of this season. And I see him as the natural successor to Jordi Alba. I do think he is a shoo-in for being a backup to Jordi Alba. That was the plan for him. They sort of played him in that left center-back role over the course of the season to try and make sure he gets accustomed to playing with this team, develops his confidence. And the fact that he performed so well was a positive. And now I think he's going to be the backup to Jordi Alba, which I'm not too averse on. And I think that's going to mean that Franco Negri is going to be released by the end of the season.
I'm not as confident about this as I once was. I think the fact that he's Argentinian, I think he probably fits into the culture well. And he's not on a big contract. All are in favor for him to stay, and they do have an option on him. But he does take up an international roster slot. He only played 800 minutes this year. And like you said, those 800 minutes could be swallowed up by Noah Allen really easily, really cheaply, and without the international roster slot. As they get into this window of needing to create international roster slots for them moving forward and to free up allocation money, I think Negri could be a vulnerable in that regard. Now, I will say, and I should have said this at the beginning, there are some asterisks to this. So, for example, this one is that Franco Negri is released. I could see them igniting his option, using the option, and then trading him. And if that happens, that still counts as this. This is basically saying Franco Negri won't be on the roster. So that feels reasonable to me. They activate his option and then they trade him for some allocation money or an international roster slot or whatever. But I don't think he makes it onto the team next year because it just feels so easy and cheap for me to have Noah Allen be Jordi Alba's replacement. All right, what you got next?
I'm going to go with another release, and I'm going to go with the one that I thought I would get to pick first, and that's Inter Miami releases Ryan Sailor. I think that's a head-on, right? I don't even know if I need to explain that one. If we're going for two new center-backs, and that's what we've basically decided on in this bingo card, I think releasing Ryan Sailor is the obvious thing to do.
Well, here's the thing. You can get two center backs by moving on Christoph and Frede. So you don't need to move Ryan Sailor. Ryan Sailor is on a rookie contract, so he's pretty cheap. He is American, so he doesn't take up an international roster slot. So it's actually very easy to keep him on the roster. With that said, there's another player on here that I think the team might want to sign. And they also have Tyler Hall, who's a guy that they signed last year out of the academy that didn't get any minutes this year. So you could see them moving on from Ryan Sailor. You could see them not activating his option, although I think they will, but I could see them trying to trade him or move him on for some resources on the other side. I'm going E5 down in that right corner. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with A5. I'm going to go for the left-hand corner.
Ryan Sailor, man, really. Poor guy. Should have heard his playlist that the club put out. It was all country music.
It is what it is, man. You have to be ruthless when you're constructing a roster to win the MLS Cup.
You know, as we talk about this, we should mention Inter Miami has turned over half the roster basically every year that they've been in existence. And so for the club to only add 3 or 4 players this year, which is not abnormal for some MLS teams, but it would be very abnormal for Inter Miami. That's something to keep in mind. Maybe they continue to do that, or maybe that they feel Tata Martino has been in charge and has built this roster and they want to keep it like it is. And I think that could play into a lot of these decisions. Okay. Should we have some fun? Inter Miami buys Giovanni Farina. Giovanni Farina is the young Boca Juniors center back, 20-year-old, that they signed on loan to the B team. And it was weird then, and it's been weird ever since. And I think they probably have a long-term plan for him. So I'm going to put that on the board at E4.
Never seen him play a single minute for Inter Miami, and yet I can confidently say that he's going to be a fantastic center back for the team. I don't know what the plan with this is. And honestly, if he was a Chris Henderson signing, and if Chris Henderson leaves, I'm not sure if this comes to reality. But if this was a more collective decision and recognizing that he's Argentinian, I'm sure Tata Martino heard something about this player, knew that there was certain potential, and Inter Miami wanted to get him on the roster, sign him onto the B team with the potential of bringing him into the first team squad for the next season. I can definitely see that as a possibility. And again, if we're talking about turning over the roster entirely, and if Ryan Sailor leaves, if Nico Freire leaves, if Sergio Christoph leaves, we are going to sign 2 main center backs, but we should also have a backup option, and maybe Giovanni Farina is that backup option. Can see that happening, but I'm a little bit unsure about this, so I'm going to go E5.
It just feels like they signed him for a reason.
Yeah,
and he played almost every game for the B team, more so than even like Tyler Hall, who's already on a first team contract. So I just feel like it's going to happen, even though I don't know if he's like a superstar or anything, but maybe he is, and they see that, and we don't know. But I'm putting that on the option, and we're having a little fun now. Okay, what you got next?
Inter Miami trades Leo Campana. He's gone. I think it's over. Sad days, but that's the reality. I feel like I've completely gone 180 degree with where I was at the start. I was at the start saying that Inter Miami is going to maintain the core of this team, and now I'm thinking Inter Miami is probably going to get rid of all the players that were not Tata Martino's purchases. I think we're going to go for a striker. We've already been linked, I believe, to a striker, and I think that's happening because Leo Campana's days at this club are numbered. As much as I love him, as much as I think that's going to be a completely daft decision, I think Leo Campana is a goner. I'm going to put him at B2.
So here's the thing. Campana, very good striker for a backup striker in this league. Like, again, he would start, I think, on 20 teams in this league. And so from that perspective, it's an amazing player to have. He doesn't take up an international roster slot. I know he was a DP early on in the season, but he actually doesn't take up much cap charge. And now that the rules have changed, he takes up very little cap charge. So he fits in relatively easily, but he's also 24, and I think he needs to be a starting striker. So at some point, it feels like he's got to be the man. And if Luis Suarez comes back, I feel like he's not going to get that opportunity. So I'm going E2. I don't like it. And the fact that I don't like this happening is why I'm putting him in my sort of on the right, where I'm a little less confident it's going to happen. If they could bring him back, that would be great for Inter Miami. And maybe that's just how they think about it. But I'm not sure it's best for the two individual strikers. I will also say I saw that they were linked to a River Plate striker. I don't think there's any chance they go out and get a guy like that. I think if you move on from Leo Campana, your number 2 striker is going to be worse than Leo Campana. And I feel very confident saying that.
Yeah, that's an interesting argument. I think Cincy is in for that River Plate striker as well, according to the rumor mills. If that's the case, I don't know. Maybe Inter Miami's name is just being used to up the price or whatever.
Well, yeah. Inter Miami, Cincinnati just bought a striker from Belgium like yesterday. So I don't know if they're actually in on that one.
That makes sense. Anyways, am I up next? No,
I think I'm up next.
Yeah.
I have a fun one, and I'm going D1 on this one, and that's that Inter Miami breaks their transfer record.
Wow.
Yes. They're going to make $50 million because FIFA likes them. And they're going to be a part of the Club World Cup because FIFA likes them. And I think they have to invest that somehow. The club record fee right now is $12 million. It was to for Rodolfo Pizarro. If they want to go get a left winger that's really talented in South America, or a number 10 that's really talented in South America, I think they're going to have to spend more than $12 million. And so I think there's a chance they break their club record. They might get Neymar, they might get Pogba and just go with the free agent route like they did with Messi and Suarez. But I have a feeling there's going to be at least one splash move this offseason. And if it's not Neymar or Pogba, who are the 2 free agents, it's going to be a transfer fee. And I think if it's splashy, it's going to be 12 million plus. And that is that's what Inter Miami should be doing when they make $50 million going to the Club World Cup. They should be spending more money on their roster. And the best way to do it is to go get a DP that costs a higher transfer fee. So that's where I'm going with this one.
And it's fairly simple, isn't it? You got Redondo for $8 million, and he wasn't even a proven prospect. And he has been a bit of a hit and a miss this season. So the fact that Inter Miami is willing to spend $8 million on a player that was not proven means that they're willing to spend the cash when they see a certain prospect. And I don't know whether it's going to be on a big player, whether it's going to be an up-and-coming prospect like Redondo. But yeah, you might be right in this one.
Well, the name that comes to mind all the time, not that this is the guy they'd get, but a similar profile, is Thiago Almada, who I think cost about $18 million for Atlanta. And if Inter Miami could go get someone from Argentina that was 19, 20, that's could play as an attacking midfielder, could play as a left winger, but that's going to be hefty and is almost guaranteed to succeed like Thiago Almada was, and that they think they can sell him on to Europe for 25 million in a year and a half. That feels like an absolutely unbelievable get if they can pull that off. So not that it would be Almada, but the next Thiago Almada.
Yeah, I'm going for E2, by the way, just for your reference.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. All right, you're up.
I'll be honest, Scotty, my bingo card is looking a little bit iffy and it's all over the place, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with this. So my next choice is going to be directly aimed at ruining your bingo card, and I'm going to go with Inter Miami trades Julian Gressel.
Okay, where are you going with that one?
I don't think that's happening by any means of the imagination. I think he's going to be on. He's played a big role under Tata Martino. If we're assuming Tata Martino stays on, I do think Julian Gressel doesn't leave this club. I'm not sure where you put Tata Martino stays. I can't see it on the screen, but I think it's going to mess up your bingo card, and I'm all here for it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Julian Gressel stays.
Where are you going with that one?
I'm going to go with A2.
Here's the thing about Julian Gressel. I am curious if you think this team can go into next year with both Julian Gressel and Matías Rojas.
No.
To me, that's where this conversation starts. And Matías Rojas has an option, is cheaper than Julian Gressel. And I'm just curious if this player is still going to be here. I think if Tata Martino's still here, he's definitely going to be here. But we didn't use him down the stretch in the playoffs. His fit doesn't make a ton of sense on this team. I think as a midfielder, it's only okay. And then obviously his best position is as a right winger. But we saw even as Messi was injured after the Copa America, he went with Matías Rojas in those last couple games instead of Julian Gressel. And so I'm curious if there's a chance that Gressel gets traded. He's also under the longest, most expensive contract on Inter Miami's roster. I think it's hard to keep him and Rojas on the same roster. So I think this is not out of the realm of possibility. You're going A2. I think I'm also going to go A2 for this one because I don't think A2 is particularly likely to happen. But yeah. So you don't think it's possible?
If Tata Martino stays, I don't think it's possible. He's definitely relied on Julian Gressel a lot this season, and it was kind of curious to see that he didn't pull Julian Gressel in even at during playoffs at any point in time. And it's ironic that we were actually calling for Gressel to come off at least from the bench, but that was very peculiar. And again, we need to conduct a forensic analysis into Tata Martino's brain and how he thinks, but it was just one of those peculiar things. I do think he's a player that Tata Martino still really likes and relies on for the course of the regular season.
Let's see what your board looks like. Maybe I can screw you up a little bit. I
think I've done your job for you, so you don't have to.
No, I guess I'm going to wait till the very end to screw you up. Let's go Inter Miami sign a second center back. I think this is likely to happen as well. And so I'm going to put this one down. I'm going to put this one in A1. I think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen until close to the season, but I think it will happen. They're going to move on from Christoph. I think they're going to move on from Nico Frede. So they'll have two spots to fill. Maybe Farena is one of them. And I don't think that would count for this, but I think they're going to go get two veteran center backs.
For some reason, I was thinking we'd already picked that one, but apparently I was wrong. Yeah, I was under the assumption that we'd already picked that one, and I think that's definitely going to happen. We're going to let two players go out. We need to back them up with two other players, unless the idea is for Noah Allen to play center back, and I don't think that's, yes, he can play center back, but we do need backup in that area. And honestly, I think what the playoffs have shown is that Inter Miami, although can compete over the course of regular season, come playoffs when there needs to be a more defensive-minded approach to these games, Inter Miami does not have the requisite tools to beat teams over 3 games. And This is a 9th seed in the MLS who finished with 34 points, I believe. So defense is going to be a big part of our overhaul in the summer. In the winter, and I think second center back is definitely on the cards for sure.
Where are you putting it?
I'm gonna go for. I don't have too many spaces that I can rely on. A1 is what I'm gonna go for.
A1. Okay, what's your next one? Next pick.
I'm gonna go for Ryan Carmichael is signed to a first team contract.
Interesting. I was thinking going in a similar direction soon.
And I'm gonna go for D5.
I don't like where this is. I don't like where my board is heading. Ryan Carmichael, D5. I'm gonna go with A4 because I don't think I set my board up as well as I wish I had. I'm gonna go with A4 as things that I don't expect to happen anytime soon, and maybe they won't happen at all. Going A4. Talk to me about Ryan Carmichael. Do you even know anything about this kid?
Yeah, forward, very promising. I was surprised that we didn't get an opportunity to see him play, at least at the start of, when we were in that phase where we had a few injuries, when Messi was gone as well. And I thought some of these youngsters would get more of an opportunity to play. Leo Alfonso, we saw him break through this season. And I do think the management is going to focus on building some of these youngsters up. And I look at the academy prospects. I haven't seen the academy play as much as I would like to, but of all the names on that list, I think Ryan Carmichael has really come up and intrigued a lot of Inter Miami fans. I do think there's a definite possibility for him to be signed on. I think it's just going to happen fairly late into the season if it ever does happen. So for that reason, I think it should be on this bingo card, but maybe one of those that doesn't hit early.
Okay. Is it my turn? No. Yeah, it's my turn.
It is. It is your turn.
I'm going Inter Miami re-sign Matias Rojas, and I'm putting it in the same line as they trade Julian Gressel, because I think if they re-sign Rojas, the Gressel trade becomes more likely. And they're going to have to make that decision relatively soon about Rojas. So I think Inter Miami activates the option for Matias Rojas, and he stays with this team long-term. So give me C2 for that one.
You know what? I'm going to go for B5. I also think this is potentially going to be a possibility. Yeah, I'm going to go for B5 because I'm looking at my list and I have a really nice B column that could be completed fairly quickly if Leo Campana gets going early. So I'm going to go for that one. And I think if we re-sign Rojas early, I may have actually something going on for me for this bingo card.
Okay, give me your next one. And as I'll remind everyone, we have 3 spots left to go here.
Inter Miami trades Lawson Sunderland. I'm going to go for E4. And I think he started off as a promising prospect, and his game time has just reduced over the entirety of the season. We have a lot more up-and-coming midfielders that we would potentially want to play in those positions. He is very far down the list. Ruiz is above him. Kremaski is above him. Yannick Bright has established himself as a player. We may potentially sign another 1 or 2 center midfielders. And if that's the case, I don't see Lawson Sunderland sticking around too much. He is maybe somebody that we can get some sort of a fee for, trade him out. And yeah, I think Lawson Sunderland might actually be a goner soon. E4 for me, please.
He didn't play much in the second half of the season. Inter Miami has a ton of midfield options. They're going to lose Diego Gomez. You could see them theoretically losing either a Redondo or a Kremaski in the middle of the season next year. But we also expect them to sign another midfielder to go with Yannick Bright as a defensive midfielder. So I don't know if Lawson Sunderland has a huge role in this team next year. And I do wonder if his future, he wants to be somewhere else where he's going to play a lot. He's not, I know he came out of the academy, but he signed as like a 22, 23-year-old. So he's getting a little bit older. He's not like an 18-year-old like Kremaski or David Ruiz where Noah Allen was. So I could see this for him.
As well, right? He would want to play as well as he gets older. So
Right. So I'm gonna go B4. I don't really love this. I was kind of saving the B column for things I really thought were going to happen, and you've ruined that. But I guess that's my fault for waiting so long. B4, Lawson Sunderland traded. I could see it. Okay, my last pick, and there's a couple interesting ones, but I'm gonna go. See, I know you're gonna mess me up, so I'm gonna call my shot here. And instead of Inter Miami signing Ryan Carmichael, they're going to sign Brian Destin, who is a young striker. Brian Destin is a very athletic young forward. He's 18. Ryan Carmichael is 22, 23. So I actually think it's more likely that they're going to invest in the younger prospect. I know Ryan Carmichael got a lot more minutes with the B team this year, but he is 4 years older, and that team was desperate to win some games after a horrific 2023 season. I think Brian Destin is the more likely to get signed. Call me crazy, but I think last year in the offseason, we randomly signed Israel Boatwright and Tyler Hall to first team contracts. I think we might do the same thing with Brian Destin. Give me Brian Destin, C1.
Yeah, I don't know much about Brian Destin. I have heard good things from him, but I went with Ryan Carmichael for that exact reason that you just mentioned, that I do think he's high up the list in terms of players being brought on, but nobody expected Leo Fonso to be brought on either. So maybe something surprises us. I want to put him in my D column. Oh, no. I'm going to put him in my B1 column because I feel like, yeah. I was banking on my B column, and now I don't have too many. I'm looking at the options in the list, and I don't think I have any options left, right? I just have one option left on that list.
D1. Yeah. You have B1 and D1.
No, on the list of items that we have listed out. I'm not sure if I've calculated this correctly. And the other one that's left. Are there? Okay, I'm gonna want you to name that out so that I can pick mine properly. But I'm gonna go for B1 for Destin.
Brian Destin. Okay, and then your last pick.
What are the options?
Your options are. I think you should just pick one, and we'll go over everything that didn't get picked after.
Well, the only one that I have on my list is Inter Miami trade Drake Callender, and I don't think that's going to happen. And that's going to really ruin my entire top column and my row. So that's the only one on my list left. I've obviously miscalculated this. But yeah, D1, put it up there. Drake Callender gone. I don't think that's the thing, but I think he's a starter. He's backup captain. I don't think they're getting rid of him anytime soon. He is an Inter Miami player through and through, the heartbeat of the team. And I know some people criticize Drake Callender from time to time, but I'll be honest, the bang for the buck and the value for money that Drake Callender has, you won't get that in the market. And we're just going to prioritize other positions, man. It's as simple as that. We're not looking at changing goalkeepers.
I'll go through in a second to see what we missed. I'm going to fill my last spot with Drake Callender. That's B5. You can see it, right? It's not unreasonable that they could try and upgrade a goalkeeper. We talked about something similar with Chelo Wigan. We talked about it with Tata Martino. Like, if this team wants to show the ultimate ambition, maybe they do go out and get a high-level goalkeeper. But one of the things we've mentioned frequently on this episode is international roster slots, cap charge, salary charge, allocation money. Drake Callender fits a lot of those requirements. He's an American. You're not going to get a better, cheaper American goalkeeper. It's just not going to happen. And so you'd have to go out and get a foreign goalkeeper who would then cost international roster slot, which means you can't use that on a DM or center back or whatever. And getting an American in any position that's quality, that's an upgrade on this team, is going to be very difficult. So unless that's the big transfer that they make and they go get Weston McKennie or someone like that to be a midfielder and break their transfer fee record that way, I really don't expect them to trade Drake Callender, because I think they're going to find it difficult to replace him from an international roster spot. So this is our 25. I got yours 25 here. Tell me if this looks right to you, and tell me how you're feeling about your list.
Yeah, that looks fairly right. Yes, Yes. Yes. I like it, man. I think I'm going to win 100%. I've constructed this with a lot of intelligence, genius, and thought put into these. And I do think I have the likeliest possibility to get a bingo. I may even call what I'm going to get first. And that's going to be my third row across is what I'm going to get first. And I'm going to win it.
Just FYI, the last one we had was you could trade Toto Aviles or move on from Toto
Oh,
Aviles.
yes. No, I don't think we're trading Toto Aviles. Not
I'll be honest. I think that's more likely than Lawson Sunderland.
Oh,
I don't know about Drake Calendar. Like, I don't think either Calendar or Aviles are likely to get traded, but I think they're in the realm of possibility. And traded, sold, same. As far as we're concerned, that's the same. So you think this row 3 is your most likely to hit first? Inter Miami signs Neymar. They trade Robert Taylor. Gomez leaves. They re-sign Luis Suarez, and they keep Tata Martino. A lot of those aren't going to happen anytime soon, man. Like, getting Neymar is waiting until January. Diego Gomez leaving is waiting until January. Robert Taylor traded could take a while, Is that the only one you feel good about?
I felt good about my B column, but then you threw Destin in there, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I feel like that's probably gone down the gutter as well. I may feel good about no. Maybe my D column. No, not my D column. Maybe my C column, actually. But then again, Diego Gomez. I feel like a lot of what our bingo's going to be in January. I don't think either of us completes it before that. So I'm going to put my bets either on the third row or my C column. I think that's what's going to get there soon. Release Negri, Sergio Christoph release, Diego Gomez goes, sign a new centre back, and then Chris Henderson leaves.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at my C column also being a one I like, but obviously row 3 across is where I'm very confident it's going to hit. It's just a matter of how early it hits. That's re-signing Luis Suarez, releasing Sergio Christoph, Diego Gomez leaving, the Inter Miami signing a center back and a left winger. I think that there's a Tata Martino half of my bracket, and if Tata Martino goes, half of my bracket. So that's why Julian Gressel's on the left side and Tata Martino's on the right side. Chelo Weekend being on that right side, him staying. I think you threw me a couple early curveballs. I was trying to be I thought we were going to go most likely to least likely on here, but then you threw Paul Pogba in there right away. So that threw me off. So it didn't come together quite like I had strategized, but I feel happy with it. I feel very confident you have zero chance of beating me. And I look forward to gloating in January when we get to it.
Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see who gets there first. For all you know, neither of us gets there before February or March. So this could be a long way down the road. But I'm looking forward to that. By the way,
I just wanted to compliment you on this very handsome picture of you.
Thank you so much.
So if you're watching this or if you're listening to this on your podcast, I would recommend you go to YouTube and check out his very handsome picture. I don't know what happened to that guy, but here we are.
You know what? The corporate world took me away. That's what happened.
How'd you feel about that, man?
That was a very interesting conversation. I think it was a really good way of discussing some of the likelihoods of the off season while actually being creative about it and just having fun, because a lot of this conversation can sometimes be a little stagnated and we may repeat our points across certain things. And we got to talk about certain eventualities that we may not have discussed if we didn't do this game, like signing Brian Destin or signing Ryan Carmichael, or maybe Paul Pogba is one that we're probably going to revisit again. But I really enjoyed this exercise. I'm glad that we did this, and I hope the listeners and the viewers enjoyed with us. And why not set your own bingo card and play along with us if you have the chance. We can maybe on Twitter post our list of 25 and you can put that together and see what hits first and what doesn't. I think that should be a fun little exercise over the course of the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put these on Twitter probably tomorrow. And if anyone wants to play along, we can figure out how to make that happen. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? This was our off-season primer. So we'll go back to talking about the 2024 season over the next couple of weeks as the playoffs go in. We've got a couple shows planned. We're probably going to do 2 episodes a week, hopefully weekdays. That's our plan. And as things come, we'll talk about them. But anything else you want to mention before we go?
No, I think that's about it, man. I think that was a really fun conversation, and I am excited to see how this unfolds because it's not over yet.
Guys, one other thing I should mention. We are going to go live with Battered Herons in half an hour at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So I encourage you guys to come over to that channel and check us out. We're going to talk more about the 2024 season, but appreciate them having us on. And we'll see you guys next time. Hope you have a wonderful night. And just don't be too sad about this season, and we'll move on from there. We'll go sign some big players and we'll feel better. Okay. See you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.